What's up, man?
Well, we're going over build tools. I lost my iPro, but this shit doesn't work. You know that stormtroopers are a bad shot, right? You know why? It's because he can't see shit out of this thing. Hey guys, welcome to Gear Tasting. Today I wanted to do a segment on AR-15 build tools. So many of you guys are probably familiar with building your own ARs. You might have even watched our video series from back in 2011 that now looks completely old and outdated. Not that the content's outdated, but just the video quality is not what we even have on our iPhones in our pockets nowadays. So that's something we do need to go back and redo. But what I wanted to focus on today is the tools that I've used to build ARs and why I chose the tools that I did and how those things can help you, or maybe lessons I've learned along the way when it comes to tool selection. So there's a lot of different ways to build ARs. This is just the way that I've been doing it for a number of years and the way I learned and the way that many ARs have been built right here in the shop. So this is the AR I built on the build series back in 2011. So this has been built in this configuration and running this way for the better part of 6 years now. It's got a ton of rounds through it. It's been holding up phenomenally, and I can't say enough good things about it. And it's basically built on a BCM platform, if you will. So the barrel is a BCM. It's a 5.56 gun. So everything has been torn down and built up. So I didn't just buy the the upper complete. I didn't buy the lower complete. Everything's been built. It's got a stag arms lower parts kit. Many of the things have been kind of added and tweaked along the way. So, over the time I put a Radian charging handle in it and things like that. But uses Magpul MOE parts. Still got the Aimpoint T1 on here, still rocking that, even though I'm kind of switched to a T2 on another gun and like that much better. I've still been running this in this same configuration for a number of years, and I still like it. Still the original Gen 1, what is that called? AFG, yeah. And then, I added a D-ball a while back. I'm looking to replace that eventually, so if you see one pop up on eBay one of these days, it might be mine. But yeah, so that's the gun that I built. So the parts that we'll go over kind of are roughly what I used back in the day, maybe some modifications from that. First thing is a vise. You really need a sturdy workspace, and you need a vise. There are plenty of ways to build an AR completely in the field if you needed to in a pinch. ARs truly are like Lego sets, especially when you compare them to building a AK from the ground up, which I've done too. So the AR platform is something that is pretty ubiquitous in terms of parts, and that's kind of why I lean towards coming back to just a direct impingement AR that doesn't have anything like proprietary parts like a piston-driven gun would. So I always kind of fall back to that for that reason too. So first thing, like I mentioned, is a vise. We don't need to talk about it. Everybody knows what a vise looks like. But you do need some kind of good vise block to put into your lower receiver. And this goes in. It basically clips into the mag well if you already have your mag release in there. But so this clips into the vise. It's able to hold this. Also like this for cleaning purposes too. So when you're actually cleaning the gun, it gives you a good access to the upper receiver to run a cleaning rod down when it's in this kind of configuration too. So a plus in that regard too. So that's one of the things for sure that I recommend that you get. Usually they're made out of some type of Durlin. I think that's the name of the material. But it's just a polymer type composite material. Then we've got all kinds of punches. That's kind of next on the list probably. So I started out, and I don't know why I've hung on to these, so this is a kind of a good lesson learned. So this was a cheap punch set I bought way back in the day. Some of these have been modified and cut and used for other things along the years, but this is what a cheap punch set does. And I'm kind of glad I say that because I can talk about crap like this But so this was a real cheap one. This is kind of a brass and I don't forget the other kind of steel. So yeah, brass and steel set. And I probably picked this up for somewhere cheap because I thought that's all I needed way back in the day. And as I've mentioned, they've been kind of cut into different lengths, and I think we had to do some stuff like this for building an AK when I was building that crank kit that you might remember from videos too. But buy cheap, buy twice, and this is a good example of that, right? So this is my first punch set that I don't use anymore. It's been great for spare parts, but I've graduated onto the tools that Brownell's made. So Brownell's not only makes roll pin holders, but they make roll pin punches too, as well as the set that of Stair Punches that I don't have right here, but I will grab in just a second so you can see them. But this is one of the Stair Punches. This is just a center punch, and I wind up using something like this for I knew I was going to forget terminology on this. Anyway, I'll come back to that. But anyway, roll pin holders and roll pin holder punches and then roll pin punches. So what's great about these is that when you're looking at a lower parts kit, you guys have probably all seen my obsessive compulsive organization on the roll pins. So, you know, when you're looking at, let's just take a bolt catch roll pin, for example. So when you're looking at a bolt catch roll pin and you're trying to put this into the bolt catch location, you need a specific tool like this so that when you're hammering in the roll pin, so you can see the nipple that's on the tip of that roll pin punch, and this is a Brownell's tool as well. So it fits right into that roll pin, so it gives it some grip instead of just hammering a flat punch onto that surface, which is completely doable. You can do that as well, but this just gives you kind of an edge up on that. So meaning that if we were to look at the AR here, if you've ever put one of these together and you're dealing with putting in the pin, this tool lies flat because most of these lower receivers have this hump here. So you can see the groove that's in this tool. So it actually fits right on here and fits flush. Of course, you won't have this upper receiver in the way or rail in the way while you're doing this. So you can drive in a roll pin with this too. So the great part is too, with the roll pin holders, get the right size here. I don't know if there is a roll pin holder that fits the roll pin from this or not, honestly, now that I think about it. It is just driven in with that, but anyway, the object with the roll pin holders is that the roll pin fits in a groove like this so that when you're hammering it, it's kind of trapped inside of there. So again, the premise is without something to stabilize the roll pin, it can jump around and walk, and it's more of a pain in the ass to put in. So the tools basically have that role. So they're there to stabilize the roll pins or hold them like that when you're punching them in. All right, here's that Stair set I was mentioning. This is just a set of punches as well. These are my drive pin punches. So you can see, I think we snapped this off at some point building an AK, and we ground that down and created a different punch too. So even these are a little worse for wear over time. They will get worn down, and you do need to replace some of them over time. Stair punches, what I was trying to think of earlier for this is staking a castle nut. So this is what I use. It's a Stair tool. This is the number 264E. But so if you guys are familiar with putting a castle nut on, this is properly staked, which means it's less likely to walk out on you as you're shooting over time. So that's what I use. Basically, you come in here with this, drive some of the metal from your end plate here into the castle nut, and it prevents that from walking. That's what these little indentations are all over your castle nut. Those are places to stake into, if that makes sense. So next up, we've got kind of since we're already talking about castle nut, might as well just keep going with that. This has kind of been a favorite of mine for a long time. It's seen a lot of wear and use, but this is just a cheap castle nut wrench. I like this one a lot. I also find myself, let's see, I think I've used, these are some of the other tools that I have for more upper receiver stuff. This is, I want to say this is a castle nut wrench too, but I think this one's been beat up quite a bit. So anyway, this is what I keep coming back to. I like this one a lot. It's also got a spot for putting in a socket wrench into here. So if you need to torque it, which that's something that you need to consider having as well, which I may have at my house, not here. Oh yeah, so torque wrench, as I was mentioning, you can put this in and if you need to torque the castle nut or something like that, you can use this. Typically that's more like kind of the delta ring or the ring around when you're installing a rail. So that's castle nut, and then hammers are important as well. So I've got kind of the ball peen hammer. This is a 8-ounce hammer from Craftsman, as well as a non-marring rubber mallet and kind of a Durlin side too. So this is a 6-ounce. So those are my two kind of go-to tools for hammers as well. I even find myself sometimes needing kind of a cheater bar for things too. I've had to use one of those. This is for the rare occurrence that someone comes in with a hand guard, like one of those old school hand guards that needs to be removed. I do have a tool for that. I really, I don't think I've ever used that. I just have it. So mag brush for, mags that don't get cleaned. All right, it's got hammers, brass hammers, pivot pins. We can move on to the pivot pin. So back into this drawer. This is one of the tools that I feel is a godsend during lower receiver installation of the pivot pin. So when you're installing this pin, those of you that have built a lower and an AR, this tool is great for that, because what you do is you put this in, you put the pin in, and then you use something to push the pin in, you rotate this, and as you're doing that, oops, actually it comes in from the other side, sorry. And then as you're putting your pivot pin in, if you don't have one of these tools, it's really likely to spring across the room. So hopefully you guys have, hopefully you guys have learned from watching videos and things that that's gonna happen and you've avoided that. But there's the razor blade trick. Sometimes you can like hold the pin and then push this in, but I find just buying one of these is probably your best bet. So I really like that tool. There's, let's see, everybody at some point is going to use some type of pair of pliers, or I think I've got just a standard set of pliers in here, but I've also got multiple multitaskers in this drawer. This is kind of my history of multitaskers. So that's a Series 2, Series 3, and actually I just picked up the new Series 3X too. So this is the newest of the new 3X, and blade is pretty stout on that. And then my favorite part, the jaws of life on the multitasker. But highly recommend a good multi-tool. The good thing about multitasker is that it can act as basically an AR tool in your pocket when you're at the range and things like that too. So we were talking about the castle nut. There's a castle nut wrench on the multitasker, which is huge. I really like that feature of it, and I've had to use it multiple times for people that don't like to stake their castle nuts. So multi-tool is important. And then really a front sight bench block is hard to beat, but they are not typically always used for a front sight takeout. So meaning they were designed to remove a front sight block. So if you're driving them out, you put pin side up. If you're driving them in, you put pin side in. If you're driving them out, you do this. So it gives you the correct orientation so you don't drive them the wrong way, because sometimes these can be a real nightmare to get out and especially get back in. You really need a good solid punch to do that, and that's kind of where those hardcore stair punches come in, is that's what I would use to drive these back in as well. So, but what I wind up doing sometimes with the bench block is I'll typically use it during the lower receiver assembly to give me something to brace onto when I'm doing certain steps on that. So it really comes in handy, and I would highly recommend it. I know I've had the like this other bench block for a long time, but I just have found that I can't get a good flat positioning on it when I'm using it. So I always kind of wind up deferring to the front sight bench block for a lot of my assembly stuff. You know, I bought this fancy roll pin holder set, this block from Brownells a long time ago, and I've never used it. I thought, oh, it'd be great. I'd put it on the desk and I'll put all my punches in there, and I just never want to do it. I like keeping them in the drawer and organized. So, other thing, we already talked about the torque wrench. You know, a barrel nut wrench is something that's important too. You know, depending on what you're doing, this is great too. This is the tool that I believe Brownell sells. So it'll do both the barrel nut as well as like the flash hider and stuff like that too. So if you see, that will fit onto here, and you can torque that, because that's something that you do need to torque quite a bit too. Meaning that different compensators or flash hiders will have torque settings. So this is important. And again, what you'll do, you know, you'll come in here and you'll use your torque wrench to torque that. All right, so one of the last things that I'll mention kind of tool-wise is snap ring pliers. I really don't find myself using them too often, but I have used them quite a bit. And a good pair of snap ring pliers is important, along with all the tips that you need to kind of retrofit these into different configurations depending on what you're working on. Snap ring pliers are a godsend when you need them. It's kind of few and far between, in my opinion, of what you're doing on an AR, but you do need them from time to time. Those are really the most, I guess that's really kind of a good outline list of what you might use during assembly of an AR. I've got some various other AK tools and things like that in here. You know, primarily what this toolbox is used for is building ARs. You can see I've got various spare parts from builds, as well as extra stocks and things like that in here too. These are a lot of the tools. Oh, I did forget to mention this. This is a great upper receiver bench block too. This is from Brownells. It basically goes around the upper receiver and holds it in there. When you're doing things like tightening the barrel nut or torquing the barrel nut, you need something to securely hold the upper receiver in here too. So this is great for that. A lot of these are different AK tools. And then, of course, back to my obsessive compulsive parts organization. So hopefully you've kind of enjoyed the little look at the different tools to build ARs. I did just want to walk through that quickly, so hopefully you enjoyed it. Please feel free to ask any questions too. We can get those answered in future gear tasting too. So that's that segment. All right, since I talked forever about AR parts, we'll do a quick question instead of questions over coffee. John from email, when talking about uniforms, what makes something a combat shirt versus a normal shirt? So I wanted to take the opportunity, since this question came through, to kind of describe a little bit about uniform stuff, since I really don't talk about that too much. First, to answer John's question, this is a combat top. So the traditional features of a combat top, which in my opinion was first invented by Crye, and this is a first generation multicam combat top from Crye. This is way back in the day when they first invented them. So you can see before fancy pattern multicam loop and things like that. This was all their first gen stuff that they came out with, but traditionally with a combat top, you've got some kind of wicking layer top that's stitched into what looks to be a regular BDU cami top. So whereas a field uniform, which is what this top is, shares some of the same features. So if you look at the arms, the pockets, things like that, you'll see what they did is just removed kind of the chest area from an existing field uniform and sewed on this wicking layer. So what you get is, you know, your underarms have the wicking layer in it. It stays nice and cool, especially in hot environments and stuff like that. And I personally favor the combat top, you know, in classes and things like that where I'm, you know, heating up and things like that. So I don't typically run a, you know, kind of a traditional BDU top or field top. I will run like Crye's field pants if I'm wearing something like a Nyko. This is all 50/50 Nyko stuff. And it's a nylon cotton blend. It's not the best when it comes to, you know, humid environments if you're going to be getting waterlogged or anything like that, because this stuff, it does dry out, but just not as quickly as some of the synthetic fabrics and some of the newer stuff. But again, this is all OG stuff from Crye when they first came out with this stuff. These are their, and I say that because these look like old field pants, and they are. I think these are, I don't know the date on all this stuff, but anyway, I know that they came out with a G3 field pant, and this predates that, so I guess this was their original field pant. The kind of the trademarks of those, and this is one of the best pairs of pants that I own fit-wise too. I really love Crye's fit. Some people don't think that Crye fits well. I really love the fit and the finish of all their clothing. So the field pant kind of has some upgrades from a traditional BDU pant, because the traditional BDU pant does not have areas to put in knee pads and things like that. You know, Crye was fairly revolutionary in terms of including pockets right here. That was kind of a new deal. And then the combat pants that they make have kind of some elastic or kind of give in the back. And I don't typically run the combat pants. They're more expensive. I like the field pants personally, so like this is the combo that I like running. If I'm running a uniform set from Crye, I'll run field pants and a combat top. So hopefully that kind of answers the question, sheds a little bit of light on combat versus field. That's kind of how I view it too, is a lot of companies are now making combat tops, and that's kind of what a combat top is. I don't know why this really is called a combat top. I don't know if, you know, it's exactly why it's called that, but anyway, combat top versus field top. All right, guys, thanks for watching Gear Tasting. I would urge everybody watching that is not subscribed to our YouTube channel to please subscribe. It helps us grow the channel, not only to boost our numbers. We're not all about boosting numbers. I really want to get our videos in front of new eyes, so subscriber count helps YouTube put our video in front of new people too. So for those of you out there that aren't subscribed, please do us a favor and hit the subscribe button. And if you want to be the first to get notified on the new content that we're doing, hit the little, they call it ring the bell. I don't like that. Hit the little notification icon that looks like a bell, and you will be notified when we make new videos. Again, get your questions answered on Gear Tasting by using the pound tag. Really small now on our mugs. Pound tag Gear Tasting in a social media network, and we'll find your questions and answer them here on the show, just like John's question. You can even send in a postcard. We've had that happen before too. So get your questions answered on Gear Tasting by doing that, and consider checking out our Patreon channel and supporting us there, patreon.com/ITS Tactical. Thanks again for watching.